And it starts off with this young man touch himself and all this kind of stuff. And you're kind of thinking, okay, this is what's going on here.
Hello, and welcome to Chaps Out Culture, the companion podcast where I invite my guests to recommend their favourite LGBTQ+ inspired art, music, literature, film, theatre, or TV. Essential queer culture that celebrates who we are. Welcome to Chaps Out Culture, and I'm joined again by Stuart Davis, who is here to tell us about one of his favourite film directors, Pedro Almodóvar.
Yes, yeah. So, who is Pedro Almodóvar? If you've not heard of him before, he is probably one of the most well-known contemporary Spanish film writers and directors. He's been making films since the late 1970s in Spain. He's I forget how many films he's made now, something like 20, something like that. And more recently, he's moved into English language films. So his most recent full-length feature stars Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore. And I was very, very lucky to be on the red carpet at the London Film Festival for the premiere of that. And I didn't manage to speak to Pedro Almodóvar, but he was just over there, and I saw him. I actually got nearer to Julianne Moore, which was almost as exciting. But anyway.
Wow.
But I want to focus on one of his earlier films from the 1980s. It's a film called La Ley del Deseo, or The Law of Desire. So what you have to think about 1980s, as probably many of us know, especially if we were around in those days, there aren't many positive representations of gay men or non-heteronormative kind of relationships, on the big screen or even on telly, in culture generally. And even less so really in Spain, because people may know or may not, that Spain was under a dictatorship until 1975, which is very censorial. I think that's the right word you can use. Yeah, there's a lot of censorship going on. Homosexuality was illegal. Men predominantly, but not only.
So when was that made legal in Spain?
So after Franco died in 75, and then it took a couple of years for the law to change. But it was, because there wasn't an automatic kind of return to democracy when he died. Nobody quite knew what was going to happen. And the king at the time, Juan Carlos, oversaw this kind of transition to democracy, as we call it. So it took a couple of years for everything to kind of come into place. And a lot of those laws under Franco were taken away. So homosexuality was made legal. Things like divorce and abortion, all that kind of stuff came into Spain in the late 70s into the early 80s. So, and at the same time, there was this huge kind of cultural flowering, especially in Madrid, in the capital, which was called La Movida. And the Movida, it's a really hard word to translate. It doesn't really have an equivalent in English. It kind of means like movement, so it's kind of like energetic, like something exciting going on. And so Almodóvar was probably one of the key filmmakers to come out of this movement, when it's kind of like, in Britain you've got the punk movement going on, very influenced by that, and then the new romantics and all that kind of stuff. So Almodóvar's earliest films in the early 80s are full of men and women who are just going around having sexual relationships with anybody and everybody, and they are off the scale in terms of the kind of stuff that's going on, because you couldn't do that for so many years. So Almodóvar starts off with this kind of like this filmmaker who's making these really cheap films with these really fun actors, and he appears sometimes himself, sometimes in drag. He's a gay man, as you probably realized as well. So this early stuff is really quite provocative. Yeah. And he's not the only person doing it, but he's probably the most famous at the time. So by the mid-80s, he's starting to settle into a bit more professional filmmaking now. He's got a better budget behind him. He's got film production companies to work with, but he's got quite a good cast of regulars that he works with in terms of actors and
Nice.
production and all that kind of stuff. And so Law of Desire, 1987, comes out. And although, as I just said, he's got these films that have already got these kind of like crazy kind of sex-driven characters in them and stuff, Law of Desire is the first time that it's really a narrative which is about gay men and gay men's relationships. So they appear earlier, but not really in a very kind of dominant way. in the storyline.
Mm.
Now there are films already being made in Spain that might have that kind of thing going on, but they tend to be quite negative representations because other filmmakers are still locked into that idea of it's something to be shameful about. It's something you can be blackmailed about. It's something that always ends in tragedy because you can never be happy as a gay man, yeah, kind of thing. Now, this film by Almodóvar does kind of end in tragedy because what happens is you've got Antonio Banderas, very famous actor now, at the time, kind of known in Spain, but not very well known at all. He plays a character called Antonio, and he is a young man who becomes obsessed with a film director. So lots of Almodovar's films have characters who are film directors, so it gets nice and confusing and then even meta. So he falls in love with this film director, um, whose name completely escapes me at the minute. Give it 2 seconds. Just need to double check. Oh yeah, oh Pablo. Of course it is Pablo. Pablo Quintero. And Pablo is gay. Pablo has a boyfriend called Juan, a younger guy, and basically a kind of love triangle evolves because Antonio becomes obsessed with Pablo. Now, obsession and stalking not normally very positive things, but this is kind of what happens, and it's not really a plot spoiler to say that Antonio Banderas' character actually murders his rival,
Ah,
throws him off a cliff quite
wow.
early in the film, so it's not a plot spoiler. And then starts on this, sexual relationship with Pablo. So the film has a kind of dual thing of being both kind of like, okay, this is immoral. This is not really how we're supposed to lead our lives, murdering our love rivals and then be kind of effectively stalking and lying to people in order to get with this guy. But at the same time, what you see is this really tender love relationship between Pablo, the film director, and Antonio, and quite realistic sex scenes as well. In a way that don't look like the kind of it's not porn. It's not kind of
Mm.
this kind of stylized version of.
Mm.
I mean, obviously, it's done in a respectful way, and in the 1980s, you still you can't have the quite the same what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of uh, you still have to be a bit more sensitive than you might be nowadays. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you do get is these kind of quite raw. I was about to say raunchy, but I'm not sure that's the right word to use. But these sex scenes, and you see this kind of developing relationship between two men who are at odds with the world around them still in some ways. Now, Pablo has a sister in the film who is actually a trans woman being played by a non-trans woman, being played by a woman actor, an actress. But also kind of adds another interesting spin on the kind of whole kind of queer, kind of different, kind of way of living your life, especially in the 1980s, at a time when that all really was not seen on screen at all. And what I love about Almodovar is that although yes, he casts a non-trans woman as a trans woman, he actually has a trans woman actress in this film playing a non-trans woman, if that makes sense. So he gets this woman to play a mother to one of the characters, a very small part, but nonetheless there. I mean, Antonio Banderas, young Antonio Banderas, okay, yeah, he's gorgeous. Yeah, not gonna
Mm.
lie. The actor playing Pablo doesn't fit a kind of stereotype of good-looking man. So they don't again, and he's not buff either. It's not like this kind of stereotypical body shape is being presented to us here either. For the 1980s, at least from what I understand, from that time, because I wasn't an adult and I wasn't out at that time.
Yeah.
But and the story does develop in a kind of slightly in this film. It does kind of have a bit of a tragic twist at the end
Mm.
because nobody quite realizes this kind of obsessive relationship that Antonio has with Pablo, and by the end of it, I won't give you the story if people want to go and see it, but the end, you see love, you see tenderness, but you also see a tragic ending. So the film kind of straddles that kind of old-fashioned idea of gay male relationships, and tragically they can never be happy, blah blah blah, whilst at the same time pointing towards a future where actually this is something that you can portray sympathetically,
Mm.
in a kind of beautiful lovemaking, scene that doesn't, it's not gratuitous. I mean, yes, you see nudity, but it's not gratuitous in a kind of, in a kind of way you might think otherwise. Although I say that, so I'm just remembering the opening scene. The opening scene of the film has um, a young man who is, let's say, of a very kind of um, acceptable body type to that
Yeah.
many men would, gay men would find attractive, and many women would find attractive anyway. And it starts off with this young man um, in a bedroom, and there's a voice that you never see whose voice it is. You hear this voice, and the voice is directing this young man to take his clothes off, and he's left in his kind of his underwear, and then he's telling him to touch himself and all this kind of stuff. And you kind of thinking, okay, this is what's going on here. Um, and then pretend to be having sex with this voice off screen, the kind of thing. And then it cuts from us watching, they voyeuristically watching this young man thinking, okay, uh, to two old men um, who are got headphones on, microphones on, and they're dubbing the film. So what we've been watching is a film that they're dubbing,
Oh,
probably in English or something originally. And what they're doing is they're now dubbing it with all these kind of panting sex
yeah.
noises and stuff, and it completely undermines the
Yeah.
erotic. You're kind of like thinking, "Oh, this is going to be interesting," and then suddenly like, "Oh, okay, joke, 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 joke." So Almodovar's always kind of very interested in undermining our expectations and playing with these kind of things as well. So it's another reason to love the film in so many ways.
I mean, you mentioned there was that short.
Yeah, so Almodovar has made now 3 films in English. One feature length one, which was the one with Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore. And he's
Mm.
made 2 short films. One was with Tilda Swinton back during lockdown, which she's the only actor in the film. And then most recently, he a 30-minute film called Strange Way of Life. And it's a beautiful film because it's a Western. Now I don't know. I'm not into westerns. I'm not cowboys and all that kind of stuff. Not my thing at all. Yeah, it's far too heteronormative, I think. But kind of like to all of those kind of things. But Almodovar has always been influenced by the westerns and strong women in western films. Although that's another topic because that's not what we're here to talk about. So in this film, this 30-minute film, it it um it stars Ethan Hawke as the sheriff, is that the right term? He's like he's the policeman in this, godforsaken Western town, and all the kind of all the stereotypes of the tumbleweed on the street, the horses out tied up outside, all that kind of stuff's going on. So he's like the key law enforcer. And then Pedro Pascal turns up one day and at his door, and he's like, "Oh, old friend, lovely to see you." And it turns out they're lovers. They haven't seen each other for some 20 years or something like that, but they used to be lovers back in the day. And we have these kind of flashbacks where they're played by younger actors, to show us this kind of drunken moment on when many years earlier when they ended up, and it didn't, it's that moment isn't a gratuitous kind of thing.
Mm.
But what we do see is Pedro Pascal's bottom at one point. I just have to mention that. The morning after, yeah. So they reunite 20 years later, and then the morning after, Pedro Pascal, you kind of see them in the bedroom space. This is not what you normally see in a Western film, is it?
Yeah.
Uh, and um, and it turns out that Pedro Pascal's son, so Pedro Pascal's character's son, I should say, I forget the character's names again. I'm terrible with characters' names. Anyway, the character's son is in trouble, and so actually Pedro Pascal has come back probably to try and distract Ethan Hawke's character from getting his son. And so what happens is that there's this kind of pursuit as Pedro Pascal heads back to his ranch some 36 hours horse ride away or something like that. And Ethan Hawke follows him back. And there's like all good Western films, there's a shootout, and pistols. Again, I shouldn't give you the ending of the film, but Pedro and Ethan, their characters do end up in a kind of, well, together at the end, but it's not clear what's going to happen next, in fact. So it's very interesting because it plays with all of that genre of the Western, It's got all the things you expect of it, in terms of what the scenes look like, the space in which it takes place, the kind of narrative that the fugitives and the violence, all that kind of stuff is all there. But it's got this gay narrative running through it that, like, two men who clearly can't come out in the context in which they're living, and there's no way they can be out, and that's part of the problem. They have this conversation, well, what could we do with our lives? Because although we may have this thing for each other, we can never be out. It's just not a thing, you know.
Mm.
In late 19th century America, whatever it's supposed to be set, and yeah, so it's kind of, there's a tension there, I suppose, between this filmmaker who is making a film which is very much kind of liberating that
Mm.
representation, but at the same time telling us a story where we know there can't really be a happy ending for these two men. Or can there? That's where the ending kind of leaves us a little bit unsure. And the whole thing starts because, again, Almodovar, as you probably already realized, likes to set up his films with an interesting kind of opening scene. The whole thing starts with this young, gorgeous guy whose most piercing blue eyes, singing a fado. Now, I don't know if you know what a fado is, but it's a Portuguese form of ballad.
Wow.
So it's not even Spanish. We're talking about Portugal now. So it's a Portuguese ballad. It's often sung about kind of, feeling homesick, feeling kind of, a bit, kind of, lost at sea in your life.
Wistful, or
Yeah,
whatever you just
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Wistful. So it starts, with the kind of guitar, the kind of traditional guitar. This guy, with his cowboy hat on, Stetson, and but looking to camera, this beautiful kind of blue eyes. It just kind of like, whoa. And the actor, is a model as well, so he's known for being kind of beautiful. Let's say, singing this fado song, kind of like, again, culturally, this isn't right. This is
Yeah.
not what you should be hearing in the Midwest 19th century kind of thing. So Almodovar immediately sets us up with a kind of clash of cultures at the beginning of the film, but it kind of works because everything
Yeah.
looks so beautiful, as is his style. So it's only 30 minutes long. Apparently he did have a whole kind of narrative set out, so there was more to the story, but he didn't have the kind of time and the kind of the inkling to make more of it. He was happy to just make a short film. Short films are quite interesting because they don't often get a good, they don't get shown.
No.
Yeah, they don't get the kind of cinema, so I did go see it first time at the cinema. There was a one-off showing at the local cinema here in Cambridge. And since then I know you can get it on Amazon Prime. And I think it might be on, I think you pronounce, is it Mubi? Mubi, pronounce it, the kind of
Yeah.
streaming service as
Okay.
well. So it should be available out there, and I very highly recommend it. It's a good film.
Well, that's excellent. I think, anything else to add?
I could talk for hours, but we'll stop there.
That is brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Stuart. I really appreciate it. It's really good stuff, and lovely to talk to you.
No problem. Pleasure.